Welcome back to the Grapevine. I'm Christy Conte, and I'm here with Jenn Lavigne of Ducks Unlimited Canada. Hello, Jen. How are you doing?
Hi, Christy. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Great. I'm thrilled to have you. So many questions for you. First of all, Jen, could you tell us a little bit about what you do at Ducks Unlimited? What's your title? What do you do there?
Yeah, so I work with Ducks Unlimited Canada for 16 years, and I'm a conservation specialist. And that's just a fancy title for somebody who is delivering wetland conservation projects in the eastern part of the province. So I work east of Lake Simcoe, all the way across to Belleville and down into Prince Edward County. And I deliver wetland conservation projects in partnership with landowners and partners across that region.
Wow, that's a big region. You must do a lot of driving.
I do, but I do enjoy meeting with landowners, and I don't mind driving. So it's a good fit for me.
Excellent. Now, before we get into how you do partner with landowners, can you tell me a little bit about what Ducks Unlimited does as an organization?
Yeah, no problem. So Ducks Unlimited is a non-profit organization, and we conserve and restore and manage wetlands and other habitat for waterfowl, wildlife, and people. And we work across Canada, but we also work across the border in partnership with Ducks Unlimited Inc. and Ducks Unlimited Mexico. And so we all sort of work together to conserve wetland habitat in our different areas. Wetlands are really valuable, and they're one of the most vulnerable and threatened landscapes. And we're working really hard in partnership with lots of landowners on a variety of wetland projects.
Oh, I didn't realize you actually partnered with the other. It makes sense. I mean, water doesn't respect borders. So I guess, you have to partner with these other organizations. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and it's also ducks don't, ducks fly across the borders too. So that's kind of a big part of our history too. Yeah.
Yeah, they're notorious for flying and going other places.
I know. 100%.
Now, how would you describe the state of Prince Edward County's wetlands? Do we have any reason for concern, or is there anything we should be worried about?
Yeah, so I would say in the context of wetlands, we should all be concerned, no matter where we live. So Prince Edward County, it's a beautiful area, and it has many large coastal wetlands, like the Big Island Marsh area. Mm-hmm. And the south shore of the county is a really important birding area. And it's a huge migratory area for waterfowl and raptors and other birds. And just like a lot of areas, over time, Prince Edward County has lost about a third of the pre-settlement wetlands. But there still are many large wetlands that remain across the county, which is great. Some of the wetlands in the county are privately owned, and others are on public lands like the Beaver Meadows Wildlife Management Area. So those public lands are accessible for landowners and families and people who are interested in getting outside, which is hugely important. But overall, wetland loss across Ontario is a huge concern for us and should be a huge concern for everybody. And restoring and conserving these habitats is really important.
Now, what are the impacts of wetlands deteriorating? And are there particular forces that Prince Edward County residents should be concerned about that are contributing to the deterioration of the wetlands?
Right. So wetlands provide a lot of benefits to ducks, but also and to other wildlife, but they're also really valuable to the residents in the area. The wetlands provide shoreline protection by breaking, the impact of waves and water currents along the shore. Mm-hmm. And they also provide flood protection for all of us. So they act like a giant sponge, and they hold water on the landscape before it sort of trickles down the system. While they're holding the water, wetlands are also important for cleaning the water. So they're just like a giant brittle water filter, sucking up water and cleaning it, and then releasing it into the system. And they also, provide lots of habitat for ducks and other wildlife, and provide recreational values for residents who like to explore these areas and canoe and kayak and bird watch is another huge thing. Forces, that are impacting wetlands, there's lots of them. Development, there's also there's lots of things and lots of different factors out there that are against wetland protection, but we are trying our best to do what we can to restore wetlands in the areas where it makes sense.
Sure.
And also conserve the existing wetlands that are there, right?
Right. Oh, sure, of course. Now, you mentioned that some of the wetlands are publicly owned and some are owned privately.
Yeah.
Can you describe how you do partner with the landowners and, I guess, private landowners to improve wetland habitats? And what does Ducks Unlimited look for when it's choosing a partner to partner with?
Right. So we work with a lot of private landowners across Canada, and in Ontario, we have six delivery staff across the province that are focused mainly on the southern region of Ontario. We partner with landowners in the county. I usually say to people, if you have a wet area on your property that is kind of growing cattail, or if it's on your farm and you're farming it and it's not producing a crop, those are the areas that we want to talk to you about. So, those are the areas that may have historically been a wetland and could be restored back to being a more functional wetland habitat. So we do wetland creation projects, and we're also interested in working with landowners who have existing wetlands on their property. So if you have an existing coastal wetland, or if you have an existing area on your property that, you might be wanting to enhance for wood ducks or mergansers, we have a nest box program that we also partner with landowners who have existing wetlands. So a lot of times the areas that we're looking for small wetlands, the actual footprint of the project needs to be about a half acre in size. And these projects are typically located on properties that are more than 5 acres, because there needs to be enough cover for the ducks that are using the small wetlands on your property. And so if it's like a residential lot or a residential property, it doesn't quite fit the bill. And then people also need to remember that the wetlands, they're projects for ducks and other wildlife. They're not pools and they're not fish ponds. So they're not deep, and they're not, you could swim in it, Christy, but if it was really hot. But it's a shallow, excavated wetland, and it's the main focus is for waterfowl and other wildlife.
I was going to ask you about that. What are the differences between a swimming hole and a fish pond and a duck pond? I know there's some differences in how they're shaped, right?
Yeah. So a lot of times landowners will call, and if they're interested in putting fish into a pond, fish require really specific water depths and also temperatures and also oxygen levels in the water. And a lot of times that's achieved by, hitting groundwater or a spring, and that takes quite a bit of excavation depth. So typically those projects don't fit well into what Ducks Unlimited is looking for. And it's important for a wetland project to have variable depths. Sort of the maximum depth is about 5 feet. That's kind of what we aim for, and has an uneven shoreline. And what happens is that provides areas where the ducks and other wildlife can hide out within that wetland area, within the vegetation, and sort of go about their day feeding and resting and doing all the things that they need to do. A lot of times, people, they may have a vision that doesn't quite align with our vision, and that's okay. It's just that our funding is very specific towards, wetland restoration and projects that sort of fit our ducky criteria, so that we can sort of cost share some of those projects with landowners. So we help landowners who are interested in doing projects. We help them get the permits that are required to do the work, and we also provide some of the funding, but not all of it. So the landowners, required to put some money in the pot too, towards the project. And I always say the more natural the features, like the wetlands, like once they're excavated, the more natural and the vegetation comes in, and the more natural that they look, the better, because that means that they're going to be used by a lot of ducks and other wildlife. It's important to realize that these wetlands will have vegetation in them, and that's a good thing. That's part of what we want,
Right.
for sure.
You're not looking for a manicured homes and
No,
gardens type of, with a deck all
you
around and yeah.
you got it, Christy. Yeah, that's not what we're looking for. And we do require landowners to sign a conservation agreement with us at Ducks Unlimited Canada for the project. And that agreement, it doesn't change your property rights. It's just an agreement between Ducks Unlimited Canada and the landowner, and it outlines, the details of the project. And it's just, the document stating that the landowners participating in the program and that they're going to manage and look after that wetland for a set number of years. We also do other types of projects where we install berms and water control projects, and those projects are a bit more involved. They involve engineering designs and different things like that. But generally, for a small wetland program in the county, we're looking for these smaller, shallow, excavated wetland opportunities.
Okay, that's great. Now, two quick questions before we go. You mentioned, this is a good segue actually into the agreement. So people sign an agreement with you. When I mentioned Ducks Unlimited partnering with ponds with residents, I had somebody say to me, "Oh, but don't you have to let them onto your land so they can shoot ducks?" And
Right.
that's not part of the agreement, is it? That's a bit of a myth.
No, because I've heard that many times. So that's kind of a myth out there. So when landowners sign an agreement with Ducks Unlimited, they still own the land and they still manage the land. It's still their land. It's just they have an agreement with Ducks Unlimited that we can access the land with your permission or the landowner's permission to come onto the land, and it doesn't allow hunters to show up. There are some landowners who will personally allow hunting on their property, but that's not part of our agreements at all.
Sure. Now, last quick question before we go. If somebody is listening to this and they've got an unproductive wetland that they'd like to restore, they want to attract some ducks, or they want to do something more productive with water or wet area on their property, who do they contact? How do they get involved in this partnership program?
Right. So they can connect with me. I'm going to, they can connect with me at my email is probably the best place. And so my email address is J_Lavigne, and that's Lavigne at ducks, DUCKS.ca. And I can also give my work number, which is helpful. It's a 705-482 7405.
Okay.
And I really appreciate being on the program, Christy. And not every property or not every landowner's idea of a project might fit, but I do encourage people to connect with us at Ducks Unlimited Canada if they're interested in doing a project, and we can go from there. I'm always happy to help landowners and also chat with landowners about wetlands. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. I've been talking to Jenn Lavigne of Ducks Unlimited Canada. I'm Christy Conte, and you're listening to 99.3 County FM, the voice of the county.